I've been recording all that time for nothing. Alright, what's going on, guys? It's El Mexicano Carlitos, and today I have a little bit of a different video today for you guys. It's scary. If you can't handle the scariness, might as well leave now because it's gonna get pretty scary, I think. Also, I don't know if you guys noticed, but I kind of got a little bit of a setup going on here. I got my laptop, I got my microphone, I got this giraffe. But we're not here to talk about giraffes. We're here to talk about scary stuff. And scary stuff is what I will give you. So, what was that? So let's start with the first thing. The Exorcist. This might have been like one of the first Exorcist movies that they ever made. And I don't know, I've never seen it, but people say that it's like the scariest movie because it has some pretty messed up pictures that were burned into people's minds. I mean, this shit was scary. This movie itself, it was banned in most countries by the content that was in this movie. It was, I don't know, pretty scary, I guess. So when people watched this movie, they were so affected by it that there was paramedics in the theater movies. There was paramedics in the theaters treating the people because they were fainting, or other people that were breaking out into hysteria because of how bad this movie was, how bad it scared them. Can you imagine a movie being that scary? I can't. This movie wasn't available until the 1990 when it was finally passed by the British Board of Film Censorship with an 18 rating. And if you don't know what that means, I will look it up for you real quick. So I just figured that it basically means that nobody under the age of 18 can watch this movie because of its content. But there's movies that are like rated over and little kids like still watch them. I mean, they do have nightmares, but still. So apart from people like fainting and going into hysteria, they also reported after seeing this trailer that they had headaches and they also threw up and stuff like that. I mean, is it really that bad? But with the new age and days and technology and stuff like that, the movie has been passed and the trailer is now available on the internet. If you are so curious to go check it out, you could watch it if you want and get nightmares, I guess. So this trailer is supposedly banned for being too terrifying as far as our research goes. That's what they said. But I have the trailer here, right here, and I'm gonna watch it. I'm not too sure about this. This picture of the nun is already scaring me. Let's see if we get a headache or pass out or something. I hope not. Alright, here we go.
Something beyond comprehension is happening to a little girl on this street, in this house.
I'm so fucking
A
scared
man
already.
has been sent for as a last resort to try and save her.
What? Really? That was the one? You're kidding. That couldn't have been the trailer. Are you serious? It's just a bunch of flashing pictures of faces. Am I just not that easily scared? Are people just nowadays not as easily frightened as they were back then? You know, I was honestly expecting to not sleep tonight, but watching that's weak. Is this the scariest movie you've ever seen? No. That was honestly my the highlight of my video, and now I have nothing. But anyways, the next story. What is it? I forgot. The Hinterkaifeck Unsolved Murders. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, but that's what it says. It was basically a family that got murdered, and it's unsolved. Yeah. No, but really. So this place, it was a farm that was 70 miles of, Munich, Germany. In the early 1920s, it was a husband, his wife, his middle-aged daughter, and 2 older grandchildren. And near this farm was a giant, really creepy woods forest thing. Yeah. So the first thing that happened on this farm was the maid. She quit her job saying that the farm was haunted and there was something wrong with it. But the Goobers, the family, they didn't really think much of it, so they just kept going with the farm and they hired a new maid and they just kept living life. Oh fucking shit, scared the fuck out of me. I was reading this creepy paragraph about something and it scared the shit out of me. Oh my gosh. So a little bit later on, after this maid quitting, some neighbor came and told the Goobermans about this strange sighting that she'd seen. She had seen footprints coming from the forest into the farmhouse, but she didn't see footprints going from the farmhouse back to the forest. So there was probably somebody in the farmhouse and waiting there. And then after receiving that information, they heard noises in the attic, and then a couple of keys went missing later on. So now to the interesting part. One night, they discovered uh, a bunch of dead bodies. It is believed to be that there was either one murderer or a group of murderers. The thing is, they interviewed like over 100 people for interrogation because they thought they were suspects. It is said that they were all killed by a pickaxe to death. Like they were all picked. Like, yeah. The maid was murdered in her bedroom. The little baby was murdered in his crib, left there. A little baby, pickaxed to death in his crib. And the rest of the family, they were found dead in the barn, pickaxed to death, bleeding, and just a horrible sight to see. Which led the authorities to develop a very disturbing story. So what they thought is that the murderer lured them one by one into the farm, coming one in after another, and once they were in the barn, he surprised them and he killed them with a pickaxe. After murdering the elderly couple, the daughter and their granddaughter, the perpetrator or the killer, he then proceeded to stack the bodies on top of each other, covering them with hay and leaving them there to rot. This story just keeps getting worse and worse. Investigators discovered that this young little girl, she had clumps of hair in her hands and bald patches in her head, which led them to believe that she didn't die instantly and she was next to the dead bodies, and she was so scared of dying and seeing those dead bodies right next to her that she basically ripped her hair out right before dying. And wow. I don't think I'm going to sleep well tonight. Now we move on to something a little bit more interesting. A man that put two dogs together in one body. Because two heads is better than one, right? Vladimir Petrovich Demikov. I think that's how you say his name. He was a scientist, but before he was a scientist, he did go to the war, and after the war, he continued with his science experiments. He experimented with hearts, trying to make an artificial heart and trying to put it into this dog, which he did successfully do at one point. And then he went on to surgically attach two dog heads to one body. He didn't have no support for his work, so he had to do his job secretly, like in his own time, on the weekends and at his house. And what he did do, since his interests were in organ transplant and stuff like that, on the 30th of June in 1946, he successfully pulled the first heart-lung transplant into a dog, and the dog survived for 9 hours and 26 minutes before dying. A few months later a few months later in October, he did the same procedure again, except this time the dog did manage to live 5 days and a couple more minutes, I guess. Doesn't take away from the fact that he still died, and he killed the dog. Now, one of his most famous creations that he ever made, one of his most successful transplants that this guy made that like probably made him famous, was a two-headed dog that he successfully managed to put together. Two heads on one dog with one digestive system. That is freakishly absurd. He had two dogs for this. So the first dog that he used was a small dog named Shavka, and he used a second dog that he just picked up off the street. An innocent dog walking around the street with no purpose or anything, and he just picks him up and uses him as a test experiment. That dog's name was Bradyoga. Bradyaga. I don't know, something like that. In the experiment, the small dog's body was grafted onto the back of this big dog's back. So it was like, actually here, I'll just show you a picture. The dog was on top of the big dog's back, and they were just living together. It's one thing to be born like that, but forcing it onto another animal, that's not right. Like, just the procedure of this experiment and everything they had to do to get it to work. I mean, you take a dog, you cut it in half, and then you just have like its head. And then how do you surgically attach that to another dog? I mean, that's just weird. It makes me queasy. So these dogs were basically linked by one body. Both breathed out of the same heart and they both had the same conscious. Their brains were like linked together in this picture. I don't know if this makes more sense, but this is basically what happened. And they just lived together. Very unnaturally. This is more disturbing than the freaking stupid trailer of The Exorcist. That shit wasn't scary at all. He kept doing this 24 times, and one time he successfully transplanted a puppy's head onto the back of another dog. However, this creature, or yeah, that's what I'm going to call it, a creature, because this thing is not natural. It managed to survive for 38 days. That is longer than most of his experiments, but I don't know. I just don't think two dogs are supposed to live in one body. Just, no. I wouldn't buy a dog like that. Why would you even make one? This reminds me of that movie, The Centipede, that crazy doctor that tried to put people together, butt to mouth. It's just something that you don't need to do. Why? Oh, for fuck's sake, dude. But that's going to be 3 unnatural stories that I managed to find on the internet. Let me know which one you thought was the weirdest one and which one bothered you the most and which one gave you the most goosebumps. But thanks for watching, guys, and I hope you guys enjoyed this video and learned something about the world today. But I will see you guys in another video. Hasta luego.